Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City of Post Falls Parks and Rec Commission meeting for May 28, 2019. So we'll first stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so for anyone who has cell phones, please make sure those are off so it doesn't interfere with our electronics. And we'll start with the roll call of commission, please.
Hale.
Aye. Present.
Gould. Cornwell.
Present.
Gorley.
Present.
Zibble-Wolf.
Present.
Duzek.
Present.
Okay, and I don't believe we have any amendments to the agenda.
No.
So, and we have no ceremonies, appointments, or announcements. So we'll get into the meat of everything. First, I assume we have no declaration of conflict either. So we have the consent calendar, which is the meeting minutes from last month's workshop.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right. Hale.
Aye.
Cornwell.
Aye.
Gorley.
I have to abstain.
Zibble-Wolf.
Aye.
And Duzek.
Aye.
Great, okay. And now on unfinished and old business. First thing we have is the Black Bay Depot landscaping, and we do have to take action on that tonight.
Long agenda won't work. Good evening, members of the commission. Robbie Quinn, Parks Planner here to present the Black Bay Depot alternate plan concept, as well as a recap of the current construction remodel. So as you may know, the remodel is is in progress for the Black Bay Depot building as well as the parking lot. The subgrade work is underway on the parking lot. The building HVAC is nearing completion, as well as the demo. And next steps will be to finish the parking lot curbing and asphalt, as well as move on to the framing and finish work for the building. Timeline on that, we're probably looking at starting framing in the interior work in July, and then that'll probably take us through winter and then ready for spring activities on the building. And moving on to the preferred alternative concept plan. This was a plan produced by our consultant. And for the backyard, basically we'll start out with the ADA access. So from the front, we'll tie in both exterior doors, continue this path to the back, and that'll tie into an ADA path, which will lead from the parking lot to the soccer fields, playground, and then ultimately tie into the Centennial Trail. And due to the current grades on site, a retaining wall is required to provide a level playing field for the soccer, and that will be installed along the building. And then there will be a bump out, which will be adjacent to the two exterior doors, and then this will provide an elevated concrete patio for viewing of the soccer fields, as well as it can be used for a stage for concerts or anything of that nature. And then that will lead down to the soccer fields, which will be programmed for 2 mini pitch fields, and then on either side of the soccer will be two rail themed elements. On the west side will be a trestle bridge pergola with patio space, and then this will also be used as seating or dual as a concert area. And taking note from our last meeting, we have made provisions to get power out to the pergola as well as the deck or the elevated patio here for any sort of band equipment. And then on the east side, we have the playground element, which again is a railroad-themed play structure, and then this will be surrounded by a rubber tile surfacing. And then along that will be some benches for seating and viewing. And then outside of all this, we'll basically finishing up with just landscape areas and buffering from some of the neighbors and parking lot views and that sort of thing. So as far as a timeline on the exterior remodel, basically with your approval, we'll look to get the grading, retaining wall, concrete base prep, playground base prep, and synthetic turf base prep on the second week in June council memo. And then once that work is complete, we'll move on to concrete flat work and the playground install, and then landscaping. And then lastly, when all the construction activities are complete, we'll install the synthetic turf to kind of make sure everyone's off it. And then again, that'll hopefully be late fall and or early spring, depending on weather. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Everything's the same from the last meeting, no changes at all?
Correct.
And no changes in the budget either, is that correct?
Yes. As I mentioned, we haven't officially got any quotes for any of this, the backyard portion yet, so that'll be the next step with the approval.
So to clarify for that, what we have in our budget for the preliminary work in the backyard is $250,000, and then the total estimate is at
About 410.
and that'll be as part of the 2020 budget, which will take care of the AstroTurf and the tile.
Okay.
So that estimate there is still the same. The amount for the building, I think we had originally said 274,000. We're at 286. So a slight change in there. Parking lot, those costs are just coming in where they are, and we did a budget amendment with council this last
Okay.
time. So
Okay. Thank you.
So we need an action on whether to move forward.
to approve the design or not.
So do we have any other things anyone wants to discuss, or do we have a motion, or?
Motion to approve the design, send it to council.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Hale,
Aye.
Cornwell,
Aye.
Gorley,
Aye.
Zibble-Wolf,
Aye.
and Duzek.
Aye.
Perfect. Okay, so now, another thing we need to decide on is community garden. Brian's going to talk about that.
Good evening, Commission. Brian Myers, Parks Manager, here to talk with you about something we've seen a couple of times over the last few workshops, and that is the Post Falls Community Garden and the preferred concept that BWA is drafted for this site. As we talked in the last meeting, the concept included expanding the gardens off to the west of the existing reserved plots and adding these 4-foot 4-foot wide by 20-foot long planter beds to try to increase, kind of fit the niche that some of our reserved uses are looking at. We're seeing a high demand in these 20 by 20s, but we're seeing a fair bit of kind of wasted space within those 20 by 20s because you have to build rows within your 20 by 20 to be able to effectively use that whole bed. So by coming up with this longer design, they can hopefully be able to still see that increase in yield and have a little bit of a more easy space to use or maintain. Off to the west of that, we've got a rentable orchard where the city would take on planting fruit trees, and those would be able to be rented by individuals so they could harvest the crops off of those. Getting down into the base of the garden, the existing Rotary Pavilion building, an expanded patio off to the front of that, and some slight buffers off to the south. A series of kind of rain-themed gardens that can help capture stormwater. As a part of this, we've entered in some negotiations with the adjoining property owner here, where they own some of this land in this general vicinity. There are 2 lots that they have kind of an in-holding or a little peninsula within the community garden space. Through that negotiation, they'll retain the rights to treat stormwater from their site on what will become part of the community garden, and we will get kind of the horizontal buffer from that adjoining use by not having a space kind of between the reserved use and the Rotary Pavilion. Pathways throughout and kind of circulating through a number of themed gardens that you'll see in the concept images that I'll show later. We'll likely still work with trying to renovate some of this parking in a slightly different configuration, but generally showing that we're aiming to try to get between 20 and 30 parking spaces in and around this site to be able to accommodate the uses largely shared off of this access that we share with St. Vincent de Paul Housing. Getting into some of the theming options for demonstrations for rain gardens off the front of the building, adding some gutters and downspouts to that so we can show what can be done in and around your home to harvest rainwater off of your roof and have plants that are attractive. Just kind of some ornamental, different varying ornamental gardens in and around, utilizing different types of landscape structures to highlight those things. Other demonstration opportunities for programming, composting, pollinator gardens, drylands, aeroscapes, and the like. So not much has changed since the last time you saw this one at workshop, so we're bringing it back for any recommendation that you might have. And I'll stand for questions.
So the north is all rentable. The themed kind of gardens, who's taking care of those? Is that the city, volunteers?
At this point, it's largely irrigated turf. So kind of the general concept would be the city partners with individual groups, similar to what we did with the Rotary Club on the Rotary Pavilion, to make individual improvements, more or less on like a cost share basis, where we're helping to facilitate that and basically run the project and help coordinate that work. And kind of the bulk items that'll happen is those infrastructure items on the front end, parking lot and pathway circulation, and then those individual gardens will be ones where a user group or some other special interest group can help raise the funds to make those individual gardens happen. They are pretty plant intensive, and they are going to be, it's a fairly big ticket item if this builds out to this full stage. we're trying to give kind of the sideboards to be able to help direct some of those volunteer efforts, so we aren't putting improvements in and then later having to go back in and tear those things back out.
Brian, where does the old garden and the new garden start? What is new in this design as far as the actual property?
The reserved or the, currently, everything south of my cursor here
Okay.
is currently developed as irrigated turf. And it's basically just dry land turf that had been seeded. We pulled in irrigation lines to provide some temporary irrigation because we were seeing lots of weeds growing up around it. And we wanted to make sure that the site was at least meeting current city code for maintenance standards around a building. So it's a low maintenance site for us in those areas, but relatively undeveloped. Within the reserved garden space, right about here is the level of current development. There's a group of young students that work with New Visions High School, and they've formerly had some gardens over behind the depot when it was the Post Fall Senior Thrift Store. They've expressed interest in partnering with us to expand the bulk of kind of first half of the west half of this area. So they will be having a shed relocated at this location, and they're going to basically build the boxes on this entire side. They'll use some of those this coming season, and then some of them will be available for rent the following year. And then the southern end of that reserved area, for now, until we can help purchase those materials or find some in-kind donations for that, they're going to till that area and just plant that with potatoes, so at least the land will be utilized.
Okay, and then my other question would be is, have we technically sold out of the space that we've had available?
We're sitting about 95% at the moment, so.
Okay, and you think that there's enough interest to expand this and head to 90 and 95% again?
I do. I think this 4 by 20 plot, I think that'll increase some demand. Right now, we're getting a lot of demand for this 20 by 20, and I think shifting it that direction will help. The other thing we're seeing is whatever doesn't get used, we're partnering with our camp program, and the kids are coming in and planting those and learning some gardening skills from our garden caretaker.
If I might point out too, we have a new apartment complex, a very large apartment complex coming in due north of this. So,
There's a lot of
yeah.
apartments up there, yeah. And this would all be funded primarily by donations? Is that the idea?
That's the idea. The bulk of this would be donations.
Some staff time obviously involved, but,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, we have some funding. The larger infrastructure items, like if we added the pathways, we're gonna have some seed money that goes in towards partnering on those items. Also looking for possible grants. The garden areas, while there aren't a lot of grants, there's a lot of grant sources have dried up. There's a lot of kind of small community-based grants that you can find in this arena. They're not going to be $100,000 grants, but you'll find a series of $5,000 to $20,000 grants for these sorts of projects.
And we own this land, all of it?
We own all but that piece that I was describing, where that stormwater piece is. We still are working through
Right.
that negotiation.
That exception, very good.
That'll happen at the time of this development. They're in a pre-application phase right now.
So Brian, what you would do is put in the basic infrastructure and then have groups adopt and come up with a theme.
The themes are more described. So you've got the list of the gardens, and then the theming is kind of described by an image, not necessarily the individual planting plan for that individual garden. So that'd be one where that user group would work with with city staff to come up with the actual planting plan and deliver on that.
Yeah. It's beautiful, some of those designs.
The Centennial Trail, are we going to fence that, or is it just going to be open?
So the fence is included already. 2011, 2012, somewhere in that neighborhood. I'd have to go back and check some notes and old photos. The fence was extended to about this point here. So there'll be a slight need to extend the fence down to be able to accommodate this entire nursery or the orchard area. Less than 80 to 100 feet of additional fencing.
Any other questions or comments? So same with the last, the Black Bay Depot, we need to have an action on this, whether we want to move forward or if we have any changes, so.
And we're making a motion on the design, is that correct?
Concept.
I would make a motion to accept the design as presented.
Second.
Hale,
Aye.
Cornwell,
Aye.
Gorley,
Aye.
Zibble-Wolf,
Aye.
and Juzick.
Aye.
That'd be nice if they can pull that off.
That's good. Okay, I don't know if we have any citizen issues where someone's signed up to make any comments.
Yes, you do.
We do, okay. So there's a 5-minute time, and you
Correct.
can come up and,
State their name and
oh, yes, yeah, name and address once you get up to the mic as well.
My name is Steve Shamian. I live at 442 South Wide River Road in Post Falls. And the reason I'm here, I want to be proactive. My comments are in regards to the Black Bay Park vision.
Okay.
My first comment is, it's awesome. Very aggressive, very impressive plan. A lot of work went into it. My property happens to border the western edge of Black Bay Park. A couple of years ago, we worked out a deal. I worked with the Parks Commission. We did a land trade, 6 acres. I got the area down there. And it worked out good. It was what we called a win-win. The comments that I have today that are my concerns is, even though that the vision is just in a conceptual stage, no construction drawings yet, I just wanted to be on record because there's one thing that stands out of my mind that's a safety issue that I'm very concerned about.
Okay.
In the drawings that I've seen, there's a proposed boat dock that encroaches out into the Spokane River. It looks like it'll accommodate between 6, 8, if you go on the outside, maybe 10 boats. That boat ramp is approximately about 20 or 25 steps from the edge of my lawn that works over. Out in the water, in front of my property, I have a boat dock, and I also have a little floater for a jet ski, and then, which would be about 30 feet maybe, or steps, 30 steps, I have a floating trampoline that I've had in the water for about the last 10 years. The location of the boat ramp, I wish I had a picture I could show you, but where the proposed boat dock is, the boats would have to come in and literally just skim or almost hit the water tramp where my grandkids, neighborhood kids are all going to be swimming. So it's a high area, high usage area. So what I've recommended, and I've actually, it's been well received, is that they move the boat dock somewhere else. Move it down toward the middle. There's going to be a lot of congestion right there. I've had some trespassing, a few vandalism issues over the years. I know the park is built for the people. It's going to be a great opportunity for the citizens of Spokane. But I'm also concerned about my own property line there because it butts right up against it. And so I like to say I'm super in favor of the plan in general. And I've worked with Dave and Brian in the past. It's always worked out well. We're able to come up with win-win solutions. And I just want to go on record that that's a very strong concern that I have, and I hope you take that into consideration.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I know Gina and I are both kind of on that subcommittee with that plan, and obviously you working with Dave and Brian in the past will definitely, keep that in mind, and, it sounds like they're aware of everything, and
Yeah,
it's
they
very
are
preliminary,
aware.
so.
I served as the president of the Spokane River Association for about 5 years. So I know, I know it's a long process. There's a lot of hoops that you still have jumped through and so on and so forth. And I appreciate, like I say, the work and the relationships that we had in the past. I just want to be proactive and get it on the record.
Sure.
If there's any questions anyone has, I'll be glad to try to answer them. But
Okay.
those are my concerns.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we don't get too many citizen issues, so it's good to hear opinions, and good and bad, and, you know, what's going on out there. Okay, so we will move to new business, and we do have Tullamore Park dedication coming up on the 21st, which, Friday?
Friday, the 21st, and asking you guys to get that onto your calendars. At this point, the tentative time for the dedication is to start at 5:30. Then we're looking at some entertainment, some Celtic dancing, trying to get in a Celtic band. We should know about that in the next week. And then we'll finish it with a movie at dusk. Now, if the band does not come through, then we'll be adjusting that up into probably the 6:30 time slot. But to try and fit in a band, we want to be able to utilize the amphitheater. We're looking at locating the movie to another part of the park, so it's all kind of highlighted. But we'll have different people speaking, from the developer to the mayor to hopefully our president will be speaking too.
I will be out of the country, unfortunately.
Okay, then we'll look at Howard as being a possibility there, in conversations with Nancy Nordum, and because it was so important to Rick, this whole process. But we do want to recognize him, and then I'll be speaking. So we'll have a few people in there and then actually do a formal dedication. It's been a while since we've done one, so we got to go find the big scissors.
Chamber.
Good.
Last one I remember is Hildy Kellogg, when we renamed it. It wasn't even a dedication.
Correct. And then the Millennial Skate Park.
Oh, yeah.
We've done a lot of projects in between, but this one's a big one. And we'll actually have two this year. We'll have Crown Point too later on in the year.
Does anyone have any questions for Dave on the dedication? So we'll just get more information on that and the time set, and
Yep.
perfect. And we have the staff reports, and had the downtown for the day recently.
So I don't know if everybody had a chance to make it to downtown for a day. I know some of you did come through, and it was a busy day, but I just wanted to give you a quick little update on it. It was a success. Despite the weather, the feedback we've had from the people that were there, the general public, vendors, it was 99.5% positive. But the concept was having us build a downtown. It's been, well, the thought's been about 4 years in the making. The actual planning's been 2 years to get permission from Liberty Bankers to design to running everything through. I can't say enough about how well staff did to pull this off. Our department was the lead, but it truly was a citywide effort. From the panels being put up, each storefront in there, to decorating them. As you can see, I had to include just this little, right there. Every storefront had a design that was specific, so that was the book that went through for it. On the back side, you can see right in there, pop-up tents fit in. Some of the vendors that came in and some of the groups decorated it. It was great. Actually made it really special, so we're very happy with that. Day before the storms moved in, it was just wet. So we actually sent crews home. They're exhausted, trying to get the power up and running. No one got shocked, so we were proud about that. you know, the day of the event, it was rainy in the morning. It dried up in the afternoon. I won't say it was sunny. If you look at the time lapse, there was a slight little glint of it, which will let you see what happened during the day. The thing that I found amazing in this, as you're watching it, is we were looking at the traffic. So we actually put this up from before the construction start time, and the traffic that we saw the day of was more than double, right? Tripling the amount we would see on the previous Saturday. So it told you kind of the success of the event. We're almost done. The interesting thing on that is trying to judge how many people came through was difficult. Having watched it several times, it gives us a little bit better handle on numbers. Also talking to different vendors, how they were doing in their sales and stuff. We estimate between the 4,000 and 5,000 number in there. Originally going lower, but as you start doing low counts on different areas, we figure flows were about every 45 minutes to an hour is what people stayed, and you start kind of watching through that. But in addition to having the storefronts and having our Post Falls Beer Hall and the City Hall, we had, some of the kids dancing from some of our programs. Did finish it with a movie that night, and it was windy, but it survived. Probably about 200 people came out for that, and considering it was cold and weather was spotty, actually very happy to see that amount. So we look at it as a success, and we hope to bring back another downtown for a day in about a year. I'm open to any questions.
You answered them both. I was going to ask for the turnout estimate and if we were going to do it again, so. Anyone else have any questions? No? Okay, park staff report.
Good evening again. Couple of items I wanted to highlight. First off, the Black Bay Vision Plan. That plan is out there in a draft format on the city's website right now and available for public to provide comments, which will be considered as we bring that back to you folks at our next meeting. So it's kind of the timeline that you can expect on that. The other big planning effort we have going on right now is our Park and Rec Master Plan. That process is set to have its strategic kickoff tomorrow afternoon with the consultant, where we kind of outline the details of the timing. The one item that I want to emphasize that's coming up right upon us is they will be in town for their information gathering effort, which is the big community outreach, community involvement piece of this planning effort. Throughout that effort, they will have roughly 5 focus group meetings where different groups of similar type interests within the Park and Rec field have the opportunity to voice what their needs are, what they see as things we're doing really, really well, and things that we have areas for improving, and trying to give us a little insight into what the trends are within our industry and within our location. Along with those, we will have our commissions, an opportunity for them to be able to be front and center in one of those stakeholder meetings, and that is scheduled for the 11th at 4:30 at the normally scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission workshop. So it just happened to be they were in town at the same time, and we've coordinated with the Urban Renewal Agency that they might be able to be there as well. So we'll have that is an open invite for you to have that time. If you're not able to make that time, we can find another way for you to be able to get feedback to the consultants in helping to guide that discussion. That's the big ones. On the project front, the project development front, Tullamore Park is under development. As you know, we're buttoning up the last remaining items. Staff is working on construction of that north shelter. That'll take us right up to the dedication day. We had our contractor out doing surfacing on the pickleball court and the basketball court, and both of those 2 items are now complete. We're hoping to hold a little bit of traffic off of them for a little while if we can, to let that surfacing harden up. We'll put nets up on the pickleball court this Friday, kind of doing a little bit of a soft opening. While that contractor's in town, he's also surfacing the basketball court at the Park and Meadows, the court that we swapped out for the old volleyball court at that location last fall. And then he's also surfacing the court at Crown Point. So Crown Point's getting a single basketball court and a pickleball court at that location, which is slightly different than what we had in the original concept plan, as that park was constructed through developer input and such. We had to make some changes with the realities of what we found when we took ownership of that property. So made the best out of the situation, and I think the neighborhood, we've already kind of received some positive feedback on that when we posted our last Facebook post about what was coming in Crown Point. They were excited to be able to have a pickleball court next to a playground. So we'll take it as a positive. And then 2 that are in the planning queue right now for Robbie is he's working on designs and bids, securing bids and such for a shelter construction at Park in the Meadows and at Beck Park, as well as integrating in a location for a proposed splash pad at Beck Park as well. So kind of things that are on the horizon, and you'll see begin to move throughout the rest of the summer, along with the other things we've already talked about tonight.
A lot going on. Anyone have any questions for Brian?
On the splash pads, how many do we have again? Remind me.
Right now we have 1 at Syringa Park. It was our first construction of a splash pad, and it opened this past weekend. And everything's, we're working through a few little kinks, but it's coming together.
And then the Park and Rec Master Plan, is anybody in the commission going to be on that?
On the steering committee. Dave, do you want to?
Yeah.
We've got.
The answer is yes.
Yes.
Do I know, we went over the list last week. Do I know whom? Top of my head, no. We had 2 members.
From this commission, the
Yes.
Park and Rec Commission. Okay, great.
Yep.
Okay. Can we get an email? You guys are pretty good about it. Can we get an email of all the upcoming stuff over the next month? Because we have the park dedication and,
Yes, it can be done.
okay, perfect. Just helps to have it all in one place, so.
So we'll have those with some of our special events that we have, the movie in the park that we do jointly with the PD. We'll get that whole thing out to you guys.
Okay. Perfect. Anyone have any commission comments? Okay, well, pretty efficient night, I guess. So we will, I guess I should grab this. We will adjourn the meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.